So why don't we call the Select Board meeting of Tuesday, August 22nd to order. And first item on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any changes or amendments?
Second.
No.
No need for anything added, right? Okay. All in favor of the agenda, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Next is approval of the minutes of the August 8th regular Select Board meeting.
I'll move them.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any changes?
I have a minor one.
Yeah.
Regarding our discussion of marijuana legalization. So this is on line 119, and it's when Robin Shai was giving comments. And I think it's important to note, if we find that spot, that really her point was that she received more emails and calls on this topic than any other in the last session. So not that she just received a lot, but like that was the one. And that's why I think we were really pursuing a survey. So I just felt that was important to note.
Okay.
That was it.
I didn't find anything. I thought they looked good.
Okay. So there are no other amendments to the minutes. All in favor of the amendments, the minutes as amended by Laura's comment, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
I'm an abstention.
And we have one abstention, that's right. Okay, citizen comments. Is there anyone here for something that's not on the agenda? Okay, we'll move forward.
Brian, could I just note that we have a substitute minute taker tonight. Monica Sanchez-Webb will be preparing the minutes from the videotape. So everybody that addresses the board tonight, if you could speak clearly into the microphone, that would be a big help for her.
We'll just yell, "Hi, Monica."
Is she covering for Beth?
She is.
Oh, nice.
Okay. The next is appointments to the Conservation Commission. And as you remember, we nominated a slate of 8 individuals. We talked about at our last meeting, and you weren't here, but
I watched it.
You did watch it.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jen Murray had suggested that maybe that there was value in what everybody brought, and there's enough work that she would be happy with a committee of 7 to make the commission of 7, and had already discussed with Terry Arnold, Terry being an ex officio member as a town representative to that committee. So, thoughts and pleasure of the board.
I'll move that we appoint the following individuals as our regular members to the Conservation Commission. Molly Anderson, Monica, I can never say her last name, I'm sorry, Monica, Perez Hart, Kemi Fuentes George, Andrew LaRoe, Jeff Haworth, Amy Sheldon, Judy, I also mess up her last name, Weiger Groves, and Terry Arnold as our ex officio member.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments on the motion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, any opposed? No. So we will now have a commission of 7 with Terry serving as an ex officio. Good. I really appreciate that. It was nice to get such a quality slate for that commission.
I was reading their bios, and there's some really
Yeah.
highly qualified people for that
A lot of
work.
experience, so that's good. Next, we're going to move to Infrastructure Committee Chair Susan Shashok with some highlights of the August 10th.
Yeah, I think we're gonna, first we're gonna talk about the recommendation for award bids for South Street Chipman Park Stormwater. Did you want to come up, Dan, or do you want me to? It's always nice to have you at the microphone. So the Infrastructure Committee, we're recommending to award the South Street Chipman Park Stormwater Project contract to low bidder Jay Hutchins. If you look at the bid memo, there was an error with the contract award, but, so the correct amount is $332,085. And we also included in the packet the firm's prior experience with projects, the positive feedback that we've gotten from them, and some of their recent completed work. And there's a complete analysis of all 5 of the bids, but like I said, Green Mountain Engineering was, analysis was for the low bidder, J. Hutchins. I'm not sure if people had questions.
Right, questions, anyone?
Very precise. Just to add, the contract signing is scheduled for Wednesday, and then we'll give a notice to proceed. So right around this, probably beginning of the second week of September is when that would start.
Oh, good.
Second week of September. Yay. That would be great.
Really great to get that project done.
So if there's no questions, I would move to approve the Infrastructure Committee's recommendation to award the South Street Chipman Park Stormwater Project contract to low bidder J. Hutchins for a total estimated cost of $332,085.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any other questions? Hearing none. All in favor of awarding the bid to J. Hutchins Incorporated, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay.
And then we have a recommendation for the planning advance loan application. And Dan put together a nice little sort of spreadsheet here between the planning advance loan and the town funded. Did you want to take us through a little bit of it, Dan? I mean, they're pretty comparable except for the one item in there.
Well, the cost isn't much different, other than the big item is delay of when we pay it back. So the planning advance loan, you basically have some free money in your pocket for a while that you don't have to spend until you get near the end of the project. So that's the benefit. It takes a longer process. It certainly can be frustrating, but if you're trying to do things with a little bit of help from the state, this is a way to do it. It buys a little time for us to get rates set for paying for the projects, the future projects.
And this is, I should clarify, this is for the Exchange Street water main upgrades, for Route 7 South water main upgrades, and a looping from Exchange Street to Happy Valley Road, all sort of lumped together into one big project.
Correct.
The projects have an estimated total cost of $2.8 million, and the Infrastructure Committee was supportive of putting in for the planning loan, basically because it gives us enough time to work on what we need to, and also that delay in having to pay it back is pretty sweet. So.
Just to back up a little bit,
Oh,
over the summer, the Infrastructure Committee has been working hard on prioritizing its projects. There was a long list of projects put forward by Dan, and these 3 rose to the top for various reasons. And this is a result of that work, recommending to go forward with the engineering, and then eventually be going to a bond vote.
So what's the stretch of Route 7?
From, actually, more exactly, it's from, not Katy, on Katy Road at Lower Foot, from that intersection going west to Route 7, and then from going north on Route 7 to approximately across from the Public Works Building. Some years ago, even before I was here, the department installed some water main up to that point, and so it's from that point south down to Foster's, and then take a left to go east on Katy.
Okay.
That's the section.
That was number 1 on your list,
Right.
Route 7, and then Exchange Street was number 2 on the list.
Right.
Then the length of Exchange Street is approximate?
Approximately from where Catamount Park is, going north to almost to Route 7, and then also Pond Lane, Manelli Drive. That section also
How
is
big
part
is
of that.
line?
8.
8, okay.
And again, why
Eight.
was,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry,
No, that,
why was Route 7 your priority?
South? There's 2 routes that the water gets into town from our wells out on 116. That's one of them.
Mhm.
And so when there's breaks on that line and that shuts down, that causes issues with water hammers and things like that for the rest of the town. So that's why.
And it's just an age, it's an age thing, it's just.
It's an age in materials and soil conditions and corrosion
It's been one of the hot spots for a long time.
A long time.
Okay.
It's also the main
Mhm.
supply
That's a huge-
of water.
Right. Got it.
Like, there's
Okay.
an alternate, but it's,
Mhm.
what, 1939?
1930,
Mhm.
yeah.
1930, and it's smaller,
Mhm.
right?
That's 10 and, well, yes, 10-inch versus 12-inch, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
Okay.
it's pretty important.
Yeah.
The Happy Valley, is that with the loop, is that the looping into Exchange Street, did you say?
Right,
Yeah.
right. And I think when we get into this planning, loan, and engineering firms, I think we need to look at some hydraulic study information to see how that's going to work. I mean, staff has some concern about what that does to the neighborhood out where you are on pressure issues, if that's tied in Exchange Street and there's water main breaks. There's some hydraulics that really need to be looked at. So that's can be
Yeah.
part of this process.
Okay.
Could I mention one other thing? You know, one of the things I remember the Energy Committee mentioning is the possibility of doing a micro hydro project in water pipes where there's enough pitch. I'm not sure these projects qualify, but I'm just wondering, you know, like where you would imagine a good location to be for such a project. Let's say we wanted to pursue that as a pilot, as we look at the creative economy conversation, if we have the right stakeholders that, I mean, you know, we know about the hydro project, the big one here, but we may not get to that for a bit yet. And so, but there are these micro hydro possibilities, so I was wondering what you thought.
Off the top of my head, maybe on Exchange Street, where that main comes down from the reservoir, or maybe Washington Street, vice versa.
Yeah, those 2 spots, yeah.
Just top of my head, but I don't know much about it.
But like, so when we go into engineering, is that the time to sort of look, would they have the capacity to tell us, you know, whether there's a viable project and what it would cost?
You can always ask the question.
Yeah. I'm just wondering for the infrastructure committee if you might keep that on your radar.
The other place you could probably do it is in the wastewater treatment plant in the discharge, when that gets looked at again too. So, yeah, there's places to ask.
Mhm. Okay.
Well, yeah, I think it's been something that I've followed for a little while myself, so, yeah, I'll try and remember.
Yeah, Barry is doing it. So we have one community that has an experience that they could share. Probably, I'm sure others.
Yeah,
Mhm.
the cost savings back can be good if you've got the pitch. If you don't have the pitch, and I'm not
Yeah, it's
sure,
It-
if you don't have it, it doesn't pay back.
Yeah, we know.
Okay, thoughts on this?
That makes sense. So I'll make a motion to approve the Infrastructure Committee's recommendations to seek a planning loan from the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation's Drinking Water State Revolving Fund in support of planned water main improvements on Exchange Street, Route 7, Happy Valley Road. So I guess we want to do them as 2 motions?
So I'll second that.
Okay.
Okay, any questions on the motion? Comments? Hearing none. All in favor of Nick's motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
And then the second motion is to approve Infrastructure Committee's recommendation to issue an engineering services request for proposal for 3 water main improvement projects on Exchange Street, Route 7, and Happy Valley Road.
I'll second it. Victor gets the second.
Moved and
Second.
seconded.
All right, you can have it.
No, already done.
Questions on that?
No.
Comments? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, so it
And-
looks like we've got marching instructions to move that planning forward then.
And also, we've been working on the water and wastewater budgets and water rates for FY18, and it says in your packet we're still working on that, and that there might be an infrastructure committee meeting in late August. That was a little optimism on my part, but we're working on it, and we should be able to get to it this fall. So we'll bring it back to you when we're ready.
Okay. Questions? All right. Thank you, Susan. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Okay, maybe on the draft survey, you want to walk us through that, Laura? Or?
Oh, are we up
Or-
to that?
Okay. Yep.
So remember, we talked about at our last meeting, maybe getting some public opinion, and Laura was willing to work on producing a draft survey that we would send out that might help inform our board on our stance with the Vermont League of Cities and Towns position and their legislative policy on the marijuana legalization. And so Laura has done this and is bringing it to us for our thoughts and comments.
Right, so I don't know if you had a chance to look at the language. Do you want a read-through of it, or you want to just comment on it? But basically, you'll see that it asks straight out, do you support or oppose legalizing marijuana for adult use in Vermont? And then regardless of your view, should we, the Select Board, authorize the Vermont League of Cities and Towns to lobby the governor and legislature against legalization on the town's behalf? And then regardless of your position, if it's legalized, do you support the legislature allowing municipalities to impose a local tax on marijuana sales above whatever taxes the state imposes to cover regulation and local public safety costs? So that goes to the point of what she was saying. Mm-hmm. And then, like, let's say it did get legalized, we could get some information on how people feel about it being sold here. So that's what the other two questions address. If marijuana is legalized, would you support the legislature in allowing municipalities to regulate at the local level the siting? And then, how do you feel about it being here? Given certain provisions, like you don't want to be next to a child care center or a school like that. So that's the gist of it. And then Kathleen proposed two other or just are we responding to this?
Just respond to this.
Okay. Okay.
I think the questions are fine, but I think you should have yes, no, and no opinion. I don't think after all, you're saying to people, either you have an opinion, you don't have an opinion, or either you're yes or no. And there are people, I think it would be very good information for us to have.
I originally did have it, and then I originally had that in, and then it was recommended that we might get better direction if we didn't have that, and that maybe by having a Middlebury College professor that's versed in surveys inform us about that might be good. We did try to get somebody from the college to review this, but they weren't available.
Yeah.
So,
well, it stands to reason when you say direction. Obviously, when you ask these questions, what this tells you is so many people say yes and so many people say no. Mm-hmm. I tried to make clear to Robin Scheid that when you represent a body, you simply don't decide yes or no on the basis of the number of people who have called you. Your primary goal is the public good. Now, I think it would be very useful for us to know. It would allow. I would feel constrained. I feel constrained anytime I'm asked to fill out a questionnaire and it says yes or no, and I have no opportunity to say, well, I really don't have an opinion on this issue. Mm-hmm. And I think, if we're allowing people to express themselves freely, then we ought to give them all of the options, and the options are yes, no, and indifferent. it seems to me. And
undecided.
that's important
Right, or
information
undecided,
for us
or
to
no
know.
opinion. I mean, what,
Undecided or no opinion.
it could be,
So I would not approve this without that.
I actually had three things. So
Okay.
one of them was that every poll seems to have an undecided. You look at the political polls and everything, support, don't support, undecided. So I think providing that opportunity is probably a critical thing. I wasn't sure if you should gather the data of the age and the
the other demographics.
the
Yeah.
demographic data ought to be up front, or
Oh, like its placement, where it goes?
yeah, I don't know if maybe if they start with that, I don't know.
I didn't know what
Yeah.
having the gender or the age was gonna make a difference. I can see where you're a Middlebary resident or not, that might be interesting to me, but I'm not sure what
The age wouldn't be?
It validates your results.
how.
Is what like, it gives you some, is it a good survey? Is it all people?
All people
All
different.
people in 18 to 24 that responded? Or do you have a good mix of the age groups?
Okay.
Do you have all male respondees, or do you have a good mix? So it just kind of says, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yes, it does.
Okay,
it just kind of,
that I can see,
you don't necessarily have to track that compared to their answers, just.
right.
And in terms of its placement, oh, look at that rain again. And it's something we can change.
Yeah, I might start with it up front, and I might,
That was my
and just to make sure is there another demographic thing, like you said, male, female? I mean, I'm happy with what you've got here, but I would have asked it up front maybe before they've answered the questions, so that.
Yep, it took a while to get this.
And the last thing that I thought is perhaps when we did the survey for the town's business efforts, we provided an opportunity for comment at the end of the survey. And I actually thought we got a lot of really good comments. And so,
Like other comments.
yeah, just a place where, because there's none of these, they're just yes, no, undecided, say.
Okay.
But to give a box, for any generic comments, they could apply to these questions, or could be something,
I think
some
that's
other
important.
thought on that. Sorry?
I think that's important, because, you want to know what reasons people may have for taking the positions
Yeah,
they do.
they may have a rationale in it, so I just thought maybe we would provide that opportunity in it too, if the Survey Monkey that we're using provides that ability.
It does. Anything else?
Oh, quick question. Item number 2 you have, it says, regardless of your views on legalization, should Middlebury Select Board authorize the VLTC to lobby the governor and legislature against legalization on the town's behalf? That didn't make sense to me. When you are asking people's opinion whether you are for it or no, and then you want authorization that we are going to go against it, no matter what. That's what it's saying here, right?
Right, like it's possible that you could support or oppose it, but you don't think that the local board should lobby, I guess, the state on it. Like maybe they believe that,
Maybe if you got rid of the regardless of your views on those questions, because you're asking the question regardless of their views. So does that presuppose something?
okay, yeah, we could delete that.
I think also, you're asking, should the Middlebury Select Board support the Vermont League
Yeah.
decision? Because it really, the decision as to whether the Vermont League will lobby for or against would be a majority of the town. So the town of Middlebury alone does not authorize. We would support, just change that.
Support the Vermont League of Cities
Yeah.
and Towns position to lobby.
Well,
but-
not a position, just support its lobbying, support its doing that. I
So
mean,
we don't know if they are going to be against it or for it. When it's all said and done, all the towns, if they were to go against it, then VLTC will go against it, right?
We don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah.
Well, actually, didn't we get an email the other day that had the stuff in there, and it said that it had changed the wording already to that they just wanted us to be able to talk about the money?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Right, so
The new
the draft policy is out,
Yeah,
and in the public safety policy, the VLCT policy is marijuana should not be legalized for recreational purposes until all public safety concerns are adequately addressed.
Yeah.
That
But
is the policy.
That's
Now,
the policy.
doesn't this go, I mean, there is the
And so
session
the
where
draft
all the
policy-
town delegates meet and vote.
Right.
right.
So
April,
that policy is
that's
not the
October
policy of VLCT
Okay,
October
until
5th.
it's adopted.
that's true.
This is the draft
Yep, that's true.
of the board.
Okay, any other questions?
I only got one thing. I
Thoughts?
know regarding the gender, a lot of things now say, please tell us what gender you identify with, is a different way to put it, and that way they get to choose which one.
Right.
So you got
It said,
male,
please
female,
identify
and
your gender,
other.
isn't
What, the question is,
Female and other.
tell us what
Yeah.
gender you identify
Yeah.
with. I hate to have the dangling participle, but it's what gender they identify to, and they choose male or female.
Good.
Okay.
Or we could have 3, male, female, or other,
Right.
probably, yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
basically,
Okay.
It's how, it's not necessarily what they are, but how they identify themselves too.
Okay. Yep, got it.
So then how do we propose to put this out there so that a broad spectrum of our town residents see it? I mean, that's,
That's
I mean, when we're at
stymied
town, we're
me
at
too.
town meeting, you get a
Mhm.
broad spectrum of public there.
Mm.
And my concern with this is it's, I mean, there's a group that's passionately for this, and when you have that, they tend to passionately, heavily load the survey attendance, which, understandable. So does this potentially create a bias just in the way it's delivered?
Right. I wondered about that too, and feel stuck. Plus, it's also on top of another survey that we're already doing, you know, around the downtown pop-up project. So, you know, how much can people respond to? Well, maybe they're okay with it, but it's also hitting a busy time, you know, with school starting, and I wonder about that too, Nick. So I wondered after all this, what to do with it.
Should we have survey boxes with hard copies at the town offices and at the recreation center?
Right, sort of like what we're doing with the pop-up project. So you have it in 3 places, so there are hard copies and there are also links through the listserv that you can go to complete it. But we're talking about whether to do it at all right now.
Correct, that's correct,
And I know I'm mulling that too.
yes. I'd say the most important part to me is to really get a true broad spectrum of Middlebury community, not just a group that's strongly for it and therefore biases it. I mean, it's a risk one takes with any survey, but this is an important issue, so.
Yeah. Well, when you did the survey for economic health, you must have considered that too, in terms of the timing.
We did, and we
And
weren't
results.
basing anything on, you know, we were looking to get information and feedback. And so we didn't, I think, worry so much about, you know, some of the, we put it online and we got a pretty broad range of responses, you
It's-
know, but
yeah.
it was not as a politically charged topic as this, so that may change the results, I don't know.
Not as politically charged as economic development.
But that was also strictly that was just us, that was our town, that wasn't having an impact on
Right.
all the other communities, the state as a whole, so this is
We
just.
did get some good feedback from people that said they were outside of Middlebury.
We did, and I think, both Brian and Victor's comment about having some place to quantify your answer, I tend to put a lot more weight
Qualify, you mean your answer? Or
Qualify,
explain
that's,
your answer.
yes,
Yeah.
that's the other quantified, yes.
Yeah.
But I put a lot more weight on it when somebody can state why they say their position as opposed to yes or no, because there can be some ambiguity in how that's reviewed.
I'd like to express my opinion with regard to these sorts of questionnaires. And I'm sorry if I constantly return to this point, but we have to decide what is the best, what is the public good. And sometimes, that may be not necessarily going along with the loudest or the largest number of voices. This is not a vote. We're not asking the town to vote on this issue. We're asking them to inform us about their sentiments. But once we have those, we interpret the results, but we also consider the issue and the good and bad effects that it may have on the town and the people who live here. And I think it's really on the basis of that that we as a representative body deliberate and make a decision as to whether we're going to recommend. And for that matter, we could even recommend modifications of the VLCT position. I mean, whatever it may be, I think this is, I hope people don't misunderstand what we're doing and what our responsibility is once we've done this, once we've gotten this information.
I don't think that anyone here believes that we're going to vote unanimously whatever comes out of the survey. I think it's just an opportunity to hear what people are thinking. That's why I really believe a comments segment is important, because you can hear people's rationale for thinking the way that they're checking the boxes. But I think we're all responsible to do some of our own homework too. I
suppose I'm concerned that some of the public has to understand this.
Yeah.
Well, I thought that the value of some of the questions are that they actually educate the community on what the issues are related to costs. So you're informing them through the tool as well as getting opinion. So I think it speaks to your point.
Yeah.
But that brings us back to whether to
Do
do
we
this
wanna
still
do
or
it?
not, and when to do it, and how to do it,
Just one more comment on the survey. On the introductory paragraph, the last bit, not the town wants marijuana businesses like on Exchange Street or down Route 7, say, I think that's a little bit just not necessary. And is that really what this survey is about?
Well, we can.
Or if you could just put a period after marijuana businesses.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's a good
Okay,
point.
That's a good suggestion.
Yep.
My only suggestion was what Brian had already said. I would move the data collection to the top. Because I fear that by the time they get to the bottom, they've answered the questions they think are most important, and they won't answer those. But I think it can help us.
Yeah, they're easy to do right away,
Yeah. So my suggestion was what, like Brian said, move them. Move 'em up.
That's easy. So how do we feel about proceeding with the survey at all? And when to do it? This pop-up demo survey is out for 2 weeks, so we're done September 1st.
Let's roll back. When do we need to provide guidance for vote at the VLCT?
That would be at your second meeting in September.
So it's like the same time,
2
it's
meetings from
congruent.
now.
Like,
So
so
to
do-
have this out for a couple weeks and gather the information and have it in a board packet, we need to
Yeah.
Do it now.
do it.
I mean, does it
fairly
go
soon.
out as a common listserv, just saying the town is doing 2 surveys, here are the links, we could use your help on feedback in these couple of areas, thanks, like it could be that. or it could be each one is dedicated. But I have a feeling maybe bundling it together might be good, you know, as a common message that
Is that a 30-second survey plus
Exactly.
Yeah.
whatever, however long you want to write?
I think it's good.
I think I would support putting them together.
Yeah.
I think your thoughts on that sound reasonable. And
Yeah, the town seeks your input on,
Some people might only be interested in one over
Two
the other,
things.
some people might want both, and other people say, no, thank you. So,
so I'm willing to work with Kathleen on the language of that, and
Should there be a comment section for people to expand on why they believe what they believe?
Yeah, that's what you're
yeah,
saying.
that we
yep, that was part of what was
Okay.
gonna get amended.
Yeah.
what was your comment?
A comment section
Yes,
in the, yeah.
yes.
So I can make a motion to approve the marijuana legalization survey as amended for release,
Second?
okay?
Moved and seconded. Do we all understand the amendments that we've made?
I hope so.
Could I just go over the second question on what I had for the notes? So I had remove regardless of your views on legalization, taking that out, and then rewording that question to be, should Middlebury Select Board support VLCT's efforts to lobby the governor and legislature against legalization on the town's behalf?
Yeah,
Yes.
And I wondered about removing those prefaces on each of the questions that has one.
I think you're fine, yeah, I think we could do that.
so on to question 3, doing the same
Mhm.
regardless of your position.
yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
the next one.
And the fourth one.
Oh yeah.
and the fourth one, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And then we're going to move the demographics data collection to the front.
Yes,
We're taking out the portion in parentheses in the preamble
And changing the gender.
and changing the gender and adding a comments box. Is
yes.
that
And
correct?
also giving people the choice of an undecided or
Correct.
no opinion.
Yep, good
Right.
catch.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
So should we have both or one or the
I think,
other?
I think undecided. Are you okay with undecided for the third choice?
Yeah, yeah. Either that or no opinion, undecided or no opinion.
Well, we need one or the other, so.
I mean, I don't care. I mean, they mean the
We
same
could
thing.
do undecided slash no opinion?
Now
They
you're
do
just
mean-
getting, you know.
Yeah.
Undecided.
Undecided.
Let's go with undecided.
I think if people had
Oh, it's
no
one word.
They wouldn't, yeah,
That's it, I'm
we'll go
done.
with undecided.
undecided.
And Kathleen, are you satisfied? Is there anything else that you wanted to note from the other questions that you reviewed? From the language of the
This is good?
document? Okay.
Okay. With those amendments, any other questions, comments? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Good job, Laura.
Yeah, it was good.
Who was the second on that, please?
Victor. I think.
Victor,
When do we need to appoint our representative for the VLCT?
Also
meeting?
at the second meeting in September.
Okay. Dave?
I've also brought Beth Erickson, a senior geologist with Lincoln Applied Geology, to join me just in case you had anything technical.
Okay.
I am not a geologist. Just as a prelude on the hydro project, nothing is happening. The Andrews Home site, there's nothing happening there. How familiar, you know that we are doing a phase 2 assessment of the David Page Cotton Mill. We did that last summer, and the state was in the process of changing their levels for contaminants, and we delayed actually publishing that report until late in the year when it became obvious that it wasn't, they had told us that those numbers would be out in the fall, and they didn't come out. They actually didn't come out until just last month, late in July. So we delayed issuing the report. We got comments back. There's been a number of iterations in trying to satisfy the state. They want us to do more delineation, take some more samples. So Beth put together a work plan in early August. You have a copy of that and the additional costs that would be for that. At the same time, it was sent to the state for their comment, and they did not reply, and they did not reply. So last week, I sent them an email, and I called them, and I told them that we had this meeting tonight, and I need an answer because it's kind of a domino effect. Well, finally, at 4:30 on Friday afternoon, she gave us an answer, and she wants more samples than what the work plan that you have in front of you indicates. The plan you have in front of you indicates 3 more samples. Beth redid the plan and gave it to me on Monday. It has 5 samples. There's only an increase of about $138 from the proposal that you have in front of you. So what we're requesting tonight is to get an authorization for $3,844 for us to do this next phase. We have $2,999.13 currently in the budget for that, so it's an increase of $845 and change. We'd like to do that so that we can get that done this season and get those samples back to the state to see what they want us to do. They continue to think that we should be cleaning up the site. I don't know what they're going to, with these new levels of contaminants that are actually in our favor, whether they're still going to want us to do that or not, I don't know. If they do choose us to clean up the site, we will have to come up with we'll have to hire a consultant to come up with a plan to clean it up and what that estimated cost would be. There would have to be some fundraising involved, I believe, in order to even finance that part, and also some fundraising to clean it up if that's what we end up having to do. There'll probably be various places we can go to get grants, which we'll look at that point in time, but it will delay. You know, nothing's going to happen until next summer as far as that goes, I think, that next phase. Something else I wanted to say too, what was it? It's been kind of a moving target with the state. You know, we had taken samples and done this survey and sent it to the state, and then they were wanting us to modify the work plan in accordance with a rule that hadn't even come out in July. So we've been trying to be patient with them. I'm also trying to convince them. When we did we're under a limitation of liability program with them. And in that application, I had told them that the town was undecided as to whether this site would be redeveloped. And I issued a schedule for them as far as the next steps that we were going to do in February. And at the very beginning in the assumptions, I said at this particular point in time, and it still remains today, the town is not planning on redeveloping the site. The site has lain dormant for 100 years. And what I'm hoping is that they'll say, you don't have to clean it up now, only if you decide to redevelop the site. That's my goal. Whether we can convince them to do that, I just don't know. So anyway, that's what I'm batting for. So we'll see. And so tonight I'm asking for your authorization to finish this phase 2.
Which is just more testing of the site.
It's 5 more samples of the site, right?
And they want this because 3 wasn't
because
enough?
They didn't think, well, I can't remember how many we did the first time, but they didn't think it was enough, and they just would like more. See, the problem is way back when we went to do it the first time, I said, well, can you tell me how many you would like? And they said, well, we can't do that. So we had to kind of use our best. It's a very, very small site. So we took, do you remember how many samples? We took 4 samples across the site in the logical areas that we thought that was adequate. Well, then they said, no, we want more. So.
Okay.
So what did those samples tell us?
There's some polynuclear aromatic hydrocarbons in the soil, which just kind of a product of it being an industrial site over all the years.
So how severe on a scale of 1 to 5?
It's kind of a matter of opinion. I don't think they're that severe.
So is that why they're asking for more samples? Because they think that it should be more severe?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
It's kind of a.
And the other thing is, I think they want to help us to try to define the limits of
Oh,
how far out on the site does it actually go. So we're actually going to go to what we believe are the borders of the site. And if the contaminants are still there, then it really kind of pulls in the neighbor's property. So we'll see.
So in the whole TIF business, there's some funding in there for brownfield remediation, correct? Would this qualify for that?
I don't know. At this point, we haven't really
Okay.
looked
We're not
into
trying
it.
to
And
develop
that would,
on that.
but that would be,
That
If
would be
we-
part of
if
a
it-
bigger redevelopment
Development
package
package, right.
for the site.
I think you would have to redevelop the site in order to get TIF funding for that.
right,
Yes.
Yeah.
if we're cleaning that up.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But just thinking ahead a little bit and making sure that if we are moving ahead, that we include that maybe in the, so it's covered by the district if, who knows?
Hmm.
Okay. So we need a motion to,
We do.
What was a second, well, the first amount was not, it was
So
$3,000.
I'm asking you to authorize $3,844.
$44, okay.
I'll make a motion that we, I don't have notes in front of me, that we approve the work plan for total sum of $3,844 for BioLink Applied Geology.
I'll second it.
Questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion so that we can complete
Hold on a
phase
second. Do we
two?
have to earmark that there's an extra amount coming from the FY18 general fund?
Probably should.
Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do
David
we-
said that was
Yeah.
$845.
And 87 cents.
Do you want me to amend
And
the motion?
87 cents.
$844.87.
Mhm.
Do you want me to amend the motion?
Yes, please.
Please?
I'll amend the motion that we are using $2,999.13 in funding from the Powerhouse Project and an additional $845.87 from the FY18 General Fund.
Okay. Questions, comments?
Do you want us,
Is it in addition, or that's how it's being funded?
well, that's how it,
That's how it's being funded.
That's how it's
So we have a
being
balance remaining. We're pulling that balance down to zero, and then we have to add some additional out of our general fund
to
to
cover the
meet the full
difference.
need. Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Thank you, Dave and Beth.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate
Appreciate it.
John, we're actually early for you this time.
Thank you, Brian. It's my honor to be here to present to you the report of the architects which were retained by the Library Building Committee, which was appointed jointly by the Select Board and the trustees of Ilsley Libraries almost 3.5 years ago. I assume that you all have access to that over the internet, and I also assume you've seen the cover letter that I provided. Yes? Good. If you would allow me, I'd make a brief statement, or I can just entertain any questions you might have.
Go ahead and make your brief statement, John.
Since 1988, when the most recent edition was completed, usage of Ilsley Library has doubled. Now, 170,000 people use Ilsley every year. Our library ranks among the top 5 statewide in visits, circulation, program attendance, and public computer usage. We are in the top 5% in these categories nationally. among the 1,395 libraries in the country of a similar size. The Ilsley Building consists of 3 parts, none of which has been updated since it was built. The original building was constructed 94 years ago. The southern addition, which contains the elevator, 2 public toilets, and a staircase, was built 40 years ago, and the northern addition, which houses the community room, adult stacks, adult computer area, and reference room, was built 30 years ago. All 3 parts are structurally sound, but each poses significant issues. For the past 3 years, the Library Building Committee has conducted a written survey of citizens' views, listened to residents in large and small groups in many different locations, heard from Ilsley staff and library consultants, visited other libraries, and asked itself the questions which I'm now going to tell you. There are 13 questions. 1, should the children's library be moved from the basement where it suffers from water leaks and mold, where steel posts obscure lines of sight so that no adult can see everything that's going on in that space? Where when a new book is purchased, an old book must be discarded? Where there is little natural light, where an unobserved entrance, that's where the elevator is steps from young children, and where there is an insufficient space for different age groups to participate in age-appropriate activities separately. Should there be an at-grade accessible entrance within sight of the circulation desk? Another from Main Street? Should shelving enable all patrons to be able to reach both the highest and the lowest books and videos on the shelves? Right now, many people can neither reach the top nor stoop down to reach the bottom. Should the failing elevator be replaced, which no longer meets state requirements? Should it be moved to a more central location? Should the library replace its antiquated heating system that requires expensive maintenance every year and heats the building unevenly? Should the library replace its 10 problematic air conditioners that often fail and do not cool the building evenly? Should the library expand by about 6,000 square feet to provide more space for children and high school students and to enable spaces for computers users, digital instruction, and the media lab? Do we need additional quiet meeting spaces? Should the community room be larger? Have a higher ceiling? You know, if you go in there now, you can't show a movie without losing either the top or the bottom, to accommodate movies and videos. And should it be able to be reconfigured into multiple spaces of different sizes? Should Ilsley have more than its 2 current public toilets, which are in the basement, in poor repair, and often misused? Should Ilsley have a mechanical ventilating system and windows that work? Should Ilsley seal the foundation of the original structure, which is currently allowing water to leak into the children's library and the community room? And finally, should Ilsley be moved to a different location where a single-story structure could be built and there is plenty of parking? The committee answered the first 12 questions each with a yes, and the last question about moving to a different location with a no. I know it's a big project. If we thought there was some way to do what really needs to be done less expensively, we would be proposing that to you. I think that the committee unanimously concluded that there wasn't a way to spend significantly less money and to do an adequate job, that investment in the existing structure would not be a wise investment of our money. One thing I may point out to you, the 1988 edition where the adult stacks are is supported by an elaborate truss system. And next time you go into that library, go into the first level of the stacks. And if you look carefully between the stacks, where there are shelves backing up to one another, you will see that in between those shelves are 4-inch square trusses. And those trusses hold up the ceiling of the community room so that it doesn't need posts, hold up the floor of the the floor above that, and the floor above it. So, and those trusses make it impossible to open that space up. That space is a series of tunnels, really, and it can't be opened up. So, not, as well as the fact that there's not enough space there. I think we looked at everything that we could, and I think this is a practical and a reasonable way to solve our problems. I think a library is a metaphor for the community which it serves, and the existing library is not worthy of this vigorous town. It is the hope of the trustees of the library that it will be able to raise 50 to 60% of the cost of doing this building. We have retained a consultant to do a financial feasibility study for us, and that hasn't begun yet, but it will soon. I'd be delighted to try to answer your questions.
Questions of the board? Laura.
So there's no doubt that people love their library and its staff. And I think some will ask, well, can't this be phased? You know, like, can it come in parts? So it'd be interesting to have you address that. Like, what if we just did the water sealing around the foundation, like, and then we did something else another year, and like that? So I think people are asking that question.
That's fine. Well, of course, to take your first example, preventing leakage to the foundation of the original structure requires the removal of both the 88 edition and the 77 edition in order to reach the walls. So you can't do it with those in place, right? Where would you put the children's library? What would you do to the children's library in the meantime, with its mold and leakage problems, its lack of sunlight, its posts that obscure people, its location right next to an unobserved entrance? Where would you put that? I don't know.
Well, people would say they've lived with that for so long, and some might think, oh, we can live with that. But if the mold issue was fixed, well, we could live with that longer while we're figuring out how to get the money for the other parts. I think that's the way some people are thinking. But I see your point. That's why I asked you to answer the question, that it's not that easy. I think every one of them are like that, like the heating system. You know, so yeah, you could do a heating system, but then you're going to go back and then you're going to have to resize it for a new building.
Right.
Expansion.
If you did a new heating system,
all of it
would be very expensive to do it in an existing building. I believe we were told it would be in the neighborhood of $750,000 to $1 million to do that. That doesn't seem like a reasonable thing to do unless you're not going to change the building. And, you know, so that would serve you in the future. I think the the biggest challenge is where can you find adequate and appropriate space for children and young adults? If we decided we didn't want to have a children's library any longer, we wouldn't have a problem, right? We don't have to use the basement for that purpose. We could use that space for computer users, for media, right? Maybe we wouldn't be able to, we could create a new heating system for the building. We could fix the windows. we would, we would still have leakage problems. The community room would still have too low a ceiling and not be able to be reconfigured into smaller spaces, so you can have several small meetings. Now you can only have one meeting at a time there. But I don't know where you're going to put the children and the young adults. I really just don't know. If you've got a suggestion, I think that would be great.
Well, is anybody suggesting that they just should use their school libraries?
Well, I think the school libraries serve
Or
a
the
different
recs-
purpose.
the
The
rec
school
department?
libraries don't offer the range of programs that we offer, number one. Programs for preschool children, after-school programs, summer programs, computer instruction, instruction on how to create things yourself on the computer. Schools don't do that at their libraries. If the select board wants to take that position, they certainly could. I don't think it would be a good service to the community because the kids would be severely shortchanged.
Yeah, I'm
But-
just saying. that-
I understand. I'm not saying you're advocating that at all, Laura. Okay?
You have a meeting coming up where you're going to be inviting the public to come
Yes.
talk over issues, correct?
Yep. We're having, in light of the fact, frankly, we were planning initially to have that meeting later in the year, but in light of the recent series of letters to the Addison Independent, Angela Lynn's statement, and things on Front Porch Forum,
Yep.
we decided it would be better to do that sooner rather than later. We've already paid the architects for one more public presentation, so we're going to have that on September 13 in the community room, I assume, and I hope you'll all come. Very much you will.
So what is the reason for the committee to say no to question 14? What was the reasoning behind that?
Well, I think there are two main reasons. The first is it would cost more than doing it the way we're proposing, at least the rough estimates we've gotten. There's land acquisition costs, there may be land modification costs. We did look at several sites. One would have been beside Mary Hogan School, where we were once considering building a gymnasium. One would be on space that's now used as a playing field beside the new gymnasium. Another one would be beside your store on land that's for sale. I think those are good places for it. They have the advantage, in my opinion, of being closer to where most people are now living, rather than this location, which is not close to where people the bulk of people are moving down east and west of Route 7, south of here. And there's really not much space to build on this side, residentially, on this side of the river. But it would cost more. And at least equally, maybe more important, the town, under your leadership and leadership of earlier select boards, has, I think, articulated clearly that it wants to keep the downtown vigorous. It wants people here, walking around, using the shops, going to the museums, etc. And to remove 170,000 visitors from the center of Middlebury did not seem like it was in an agreement with the idea of keeping this and reinvigorating this town. Those are the reasons. I mean, there are good reasons to move it. I don't deny that, but there was very little interest on the committee for doing so.
So you think there's a big cost difference if you move it?
Yeah, I think the cost difference is $1 million or $2 million.
Okay. And fixing these 13 problems, how much would you accomplish when you fix all these 13 things that you mentioned?
How much would we accomplish?
Yeah.
We would have a building that would, first of all, deal with all the problems that I've listed, a building that would attract more usage, a building that would be far better for children and young adults, and a building that would be designed so it could be flexible. In other words, a building which would be easy to modify inside it, inside its exterior walls. That's not true of what we have now. So that's what would be accomplished. You know, I'm not, I wish this were a $5 million project, you know? You could cut back on the finishes, you know, and have much less expensive, not much less, but somewhat less expensive finishes, right? You could not have any new furnishings. That you could phase in, I suppose. But, you know, I don't know how you could phase in much.
I think another point in response, I mean, the question you raise is a very important one. I think that obviously if you start from scratch, you can design everything so it's all integrated. And one of the problems of just fixing up the old space was that you could never get that. So it was decided that really it was necessary to remove the two additions that had been made. And what you're getting essentially is a new building.
Yep.
And at the same time, I think, and I know Dennis O'Brien wrote a letter in the Addison Independent that it also restores a historic building. And if you see the way this building is set, it really sets out the old building, and yet at the same time, it will have the flexibility of a new building. But I think your point is important, that one of the reasons for doing something totally new is that then you can plan an integrated and flexible space that that you don't have now. But this has been achieved in the
Yeah, what you get, okay, is first of all you restore the prominence of the original building, which is now obscured by these additions on either side. You get to see it in 3 dimensions. You use that space for reading and some snacks, and maybe a little bit for high school students. And then you get new space, right? You move Middlebury Community Television, which is on the 4th floor now, which has only one way of getting in or out, which is if you start modifying the business building, would no longer be able to be used because it doesn't meet fire codes. So you get wonderful reading spaces in the original building, and you get brand new space, which not only will serve us well in the next 20 years, but is open. So it can be used in the future, in different ways. You get an at-grade entrance from Main Street. You get an at-grade entrance from the parking area, both of which feed into a circulation desk, so that people who come and go from the library are always within sight of staff. You get a separate entrance also coming in through there for the community room, which now has its own entrance, which is not observed by anyone. You know, I suppose one thing you could play around with, Laura, would be if you wanted to move the children into the community room. It's got some space. It does have moisture problems. It doesn't have an observed entrance, but it does have 2 decent toilets. And then you wouldn't have a community room then. You could wait for another time to build a community room. It's hard. I mean, this is not, we didn't set out to do a project that was going to remove 2/3 of what we now have.
So you know, I asked John to come to make sure that the final report was highlighted and that we put a stake in the ground that this is the final report. I think this is an exercise that's going to continue for quite some time. I mean, you know, frankly, your questions are more baiting. That, you know, there would be no one that would take those questions and say no to the first 12 questions. I think it's a function of financing and whether we can afford to do it. And we have a report that's being commissioned to determine if we can meet some of that challenge. And so, you know, there's a million ways to skin the cat, but we all recognize that we have some shortfalls. And so it is a pretty comprehensive report, and it did point out some good options. And so I don't want to spend all night debating something that is going to be debated for quite some time to come. I wanted to make sure that we had the report was presented and entered into the public record for everybody to see, have access to. If there are any questions along that line, otherwise I'd like to move the agenda forward, please.
May I just add one thing?
Sure.
This is not a project that we expect you to act on in the next year and a half.
That's why I'm saying we don't need to debate the project right now.
Right, no, it's,
So-
we need to do the feasibility study, and we need to continue to make our case to you as well as the public and the voters. So it, you know, it's going to take a little while. I don't know whether it's going to be a year and a half or 2.5 or even 3.5 years.
Yeah.
Someday the town will do these things, I am sure. I hope it's sooner rather than later.
And I think September 13th is a good opportunity for people to hear directly from the architects,
Yes.
all the different plans and ask
We will hear from the
questions.
architects. They will be able to ask the architects questions. They'll be able to ask or make statements to the trustees and the members of the building committee, even though the building committee has essentially ceased to exist. We're still
Yeah.
involved and interested.
Is there a set time for that meeting, John?
Excuse me?
7 o'clock.
Yes, 7 o'clock on September 13th.
The only comment I have is how we will address and prioritize some of these issues that will come up in the meantime.
I
Like
know.
the heating, the elevator,
Mhm.
you know, I'm gonna have a hard time, you know, putting money into that building, knowing its many deficiencies, and not knowing when this project is gonna, you know, when it would happen. That's my biggest concern right now, is how we're gonna maintain what we have.
Until we get the,
I think that's a very legitimate question. I mean, if the elevator really fails and you've got to replace it, if the old boiler goes up in smoke, what are you going to do? If, God forbid, some person comes in at by the children's entrance and abuses a child, what are you going to do? You know, I mean, there are lots of questions that you have to decide. And I understand, you know, I mean, do you really want to spend more money fixing the windows now? Fixing the air conditioning system? What are you going to do about the mold? I don't know.
That's what we get paid the big bucks to do, John.
That's right, that's right.
All right, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
I think what this does do, though, is for us is to look more closely at the idea of advancing a master plan for this section of town. Because I mean, this is a large geometric footprint on here. And I start to think of what I have seen done in other parts around the country and the world, where there might even be some shared opportunities, such as a shared mechanical plant that could be designed to handle the entire area and reduce the demand to just one site. I've seen things with shared elevators and common lobby spaces. So it seems to me if we can move ahead with some master plan and get some developers as well, there may be some cost savings that could be realized with some shared resources. And so I'd like to move that master plan forward as well during whatever time we need to get this thing going.
that's a good point, Nick. Mhm.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, John. Appreciate all your work on that committee.
Yeah.
Well, I
thank
enjoyed
you.
it. And this report is for you. I would say, when it's long, you know, there are 60 pages, but most of them are illustrations. So don't be intimidated by the number.
Is it on display at the library too, the report that you just gave us?
No, it's online, no. I mean,
Okay.
there-
It's digitized.
Okay.
I think there is one report somewhere at the library, there's one report for the trustees, we only paid for 3.
Right, that's what I mean, so there is one copy at the library, but it's,
I can't tell you whether it's at the front desk or not.
okay.
I will try to make sure that it is.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Okay, check warrants.
Okay, I did the expenditure review today. Everything seems to be in order. So I would like to make a motion to approve total expenditures in the amount of $389,259.89, out of which $282,369.63 goes for accounts payable, and $106,890.26 goes for the payroll of the period ending 8/12/2017.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Kathleen?
Okay, I'm going to make up for some short town manager's report tonight. Update on the status of Vermont gas easements. Following the board's June 27th decision to approve the easements requested by Vermont Gas Systems, we worked with council to finalize the 3 easement deeds, and a notice of proposed conveyance was published in the Addison Independent on August 14th, in accordance with 24 VSA 1061. Absent the receipt of a petition signed by 5% of the legal voters of Middlebury objecting to the proposed conveyance, the conveyance will become final on September 12th. Update on disaster declaration for East Middlebury storm damage. On August 17th, the Vermont Department of Public Safety notified the town that the state of Vermont has received a federal disaster declaration for severe storms and flooding related to a series of storms that struck Vermont from June 29th to July 1st. The formal declaration initiates a process through which federal aid may be made available to begin repairing the damage to the banks of the Middlebury River caused by the July 1st storm. As a first step, the town is intending to apply for federal aid. Towns that plan to apply for federal aid are required to attend one of 4 applicant briefings scheduled throughout the state between August 24th and August 30th. As he has done in the past, Public Works Planning Director Dan Werner will act as the town's representative and coordinate the application for aid. We expect to have additional information regarding the timeline for receiving aid to share with the board in the next week or 2. The town's flooding damage that we documented so far was about $8,000 in road washouts and such, so hopefully we'll get 75 to 87.5% of that in return at a minimum. Update on the development of the draft 2018 VLCT policy. As we mentioned previously, that is in your packet tonight. And as a reminder, the board will be asked to select Middlebury's voting delegate to Town Fair at its September 26th meeting. The fire department received a FEMA grant for communications equipment. The grant that was submitted by the fire department in March has been approved in the amount of $219,223, of which the town's share is $10,961, with plans to take that matching funds from the capital budget.
That's very impressive, the way they did it. I think they deserve a lot of credit for the way they did that application, because there's a lot of competition for that.
Yeah.
And so it requires some really good thought and justification.
I was very glad too,
Yeah, they did a really good job on that.
Response from Bread Loaf regarding air conditioning for the town gym. In response to comments received from resident Victoria DeWind at the board's August 8th meeting regarding the lack of air conditioning at the town gym, we reached out to Bread Loaf for additional background information and a rough cost estimate for adding air conditioning now. Included in your packet for the board's consideration is a response from John Johnston, Bread Loaf Vice President of MEP Services. JJ notes in his memo that air conditioning for the gym was not designed into the project due primarily to the cost, including maintenance and annual utility cost, and the desire for the project to be energy efficient. He estimates that adding air conditioning at this point would cost between $60,000 and $95,000, pending an engineering study to determine actual equipment sizes, electrical requirements, roof structure capacity, etc. I relayed that to Victoria DeWind, and she asked that perhaps it be included in our future planning for capital improvements.
Could I just say something to that? Because I was on the building committee. Who else was on the building committee? Were you on the building committee? So do you remember that conversation about, because I was like, how did we not air condition
I do remember
the gym? But now I do remember when I saw that response,
Yeah.
because I thought, well, we weren't planning to use it in the summer as much, and that's typical of most gyms, and that's what his letter was saying too. So it wasn't like oversight, it was just like,
It wasn't oversight.
it was just what we thought was going to be the reality. And so now we've had a lot of rain, so they're using the gym more. We're going to have more rain, so we're in a different climate reality. So I think we have to decide, what we're going to do with that portion or not. Or we're just not going to use it, and that's going to be our policy. We're going to limit its use in the summer. So it's a tough one, but
One rainy summer doesn't
Right.
mean we've got a long-term different climate for that, though, because it was dry last summer. So, I think we need to look at a period of years and see how much it's used.
I know, but
I think it's very rare that gyms are air conditioned to begin with.
that's what the letter was saying.
That's what
Yeah.
JJ said.
Like if you, I go to the Edge in Wilson, and the huge gym they have in the indoor soccer field, it's never air conditioned there, and that's a commercial place. They
Is that,
charge you money for
I
it.
wonder if that's typical for Northeast, but like if you were to go to gyms in the South, would they be air conditioned because of climate conditions? And so we're just working with an older assumption of climate conditions.
Well, they may be, but I mean, the fact is that a large box like that is very difficult and expensive to climate control.
Yeah.
You just have a lot of wasted cool air. It's just the nature of them. So it's kind of the irony is that if, we're seeing warmer summers, but then we end up air conditioning, which uses more energy, which theoretically is contributing. So it's I remember it was a difficult decision, but the overall view was that they just typically aren't air conditioned, and that the added cost of maintenance and operating it was.
And there are several portions of the rec center that are air conditioned
That's
and
correct.
can be used, and they
Below
are.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's only the open gym
Right.
that's not air
Yes.
conditioned, right?
Okay, well, now we've been
Do we have fans in there? Maybe just by putting air movement, like in a big space like a barn, which I'm very familiar with. In my industry, we just move
To
air.
move the air, yeah.
And that might
Yeah,
be
and that-
adaptable onto the present ducting network.
I thought that we had air circulation as part of the scheme.
It's been a while, but I'm kind of thinking there was the capability for that, so there are fans in there. So there might be a third option in here.
Okay, that was a good suggestion, Brian, the fans.
This morning, the library trustees held a farewell reception for Kevin Unrath, and as he departs for his new position at the Pearson Library in Shelburne. A couple of additions to the posted town manager's report. Mill Street parking lot, as part of a park and ride grant from the State Agency of Transportation, new streetlights have been installed in the Mill Street parking lot just yesterday. Additional improvements to completed in the next few weeks include stormwater upgrades, fresh landscaping, paving, and line striping. Special thanks to Department of Public Works crew members for patch paving the trench cut in the pavement for the installation of the new conduit for the street lights today in order to allow parking for this weekend's Middlebury New Filmmakers Festival. Transportation Advisory Committee, Betty Nuovo, the town's representative to the Addison County Regional Planning Commission Transportation Advisory Committee, reported that at the TAC meeting of August 16, The committee recommended awarding the town of Middlebury $15,000 to fund an alternatives analysis for siting a passenger rail platform in Middlebury to meet a 2018 site selection deadline set by VTrans. As outlined in the town's grant application, which you approved at your meeting in July, as developed by Planning and Zoning Director Jennifer Murray, the town seeks to update a 2003 multimodal transportation feasibility study performed by Stevens and Associates. Betty also reported that the committee reviewed this Vermont Agency of Transportation's budget for the coming year. And that is it for the town manager's report.
Well, thank you. A lot going on. Okay, board member concerns. Victor?
I would like to remind people that school's going to be in session next week, so there'll be more kids on the street, more traffic, so be watchful whether you're driving a car or a bike or you're walking. Be careful, please.
Wow, next week already. Summer went fast, didn't it?
Yeah,
Nick?
When the kids are grown, it's like, oh yeah, I guess it does start again, doesn't it?
What grades are your kids in?
My son's starting high school this year.
Yes?
And 4th and 5th grade for girls.
Good luck.
Nothing at all, Brian.
Okay, Susan?
Nothing.
I had a couple of things I just wanted to mention. First was the gardens in town this year, in particular the ones around and leading up to the circle, have often had comments in past years about visibility and choice of plants, and I haven't heard any this year, and I just thought that things looked really nice and wanted to thank staff for doing a good job, because I think the town looks good. And then I also wanted to thank BMP. There is tomorrow night the last music and movie series concert tomorrow night on the College Park. My daughter and I have attended 3 of the movies, and it was a lot of fun to be outside and watch on a screen and be under the stars. So if you haven't attended and you're available tomorrow night, I would encourage people to come out and see the concert. And then I wanted to, and thanks to the BMP for putting that together, and all of, especially the sponsors, you know, the businesses that helped make that happen. And then I just wanted to remind anybody listening that might be interested, we still are short on the Energy Committee and do have projects we want to move forward and could use people, if anyone's interested, to please let Kathleen know. I would be appreciative. So that's all.
Thanks, Heather. Laura?
And maybe come to the Creative Economy Initiative
Yes.
on September 18th, where you may be inspired to join
Yes.
Energy Committee or other projects. And just building on a couple of comments that, you know, with school starting next week, this Vivid Mid pop-up demonstration project overlaps with that, and it's a happy accident, you know, that it does. And in your packet, you have a copy of the description that is on the boxes with surveys to give us input on this bike and pedestrian pop-up demonstration project. It's a collaborative effort between the town, Local Motion, Better Middlebury Partnership, Middlebury Safe Routes, and the Addison County Regional Planning Commission. So they're temporary, you've seen them, and they're intended to create beauty as well as enhance pedestrian safety. So we'll look forward to your feedback. So you see the link to the survey. We'll put that on the listserv, as we said earlier in the meeting, so people could either give us the feedback online, or they could fill out a hard copy of the survey at the town offices or the library. You'll find them there. So I learned a lot from this project, and it's been interesting, like Jim Gish, just to be out there. I was out there monitoring this morning and just watching behavior around the new construction. And it's so you can sign up for one of those time slots. It's only an hour and a half, and you could pick one to watch for a while, and it's just really interesting to do that. So I invite you to consider signing up for a monitoring slot if you're up for it over the next week and a half.
How would somebody do that, Laura?
There's a Sign Up Genius link, which I'll send to you.
And by the way, Merchants Road looks very nice after it's completed. It looks beautiful.
Came out nice, didn't it?
Yep.
Come on, nice.
Very nice.
Think we can deal with that for 3 years?
I think we will.
Yeah.
One of the comments at the diner, what's his name?
Carl?
Carl was mentioning about that the walkway. I don't think it's possible, but he was wondering if we can connect the two sides of the Merchants Row with the walkway.
But I think he was looking at it actually during, if I maybe I
Is it
misunderstood.
during the
During the
construction?
construction, I think one of the things that was a lesson learned was that that loss of the pedestrian flow through on Merchants Row
Yeah.
did become kind of problematic in many ways. You know, cases of people with difficult mobility going down there because they saw it was open and then realizing it was dead-ended. So that'll be something I think we'll have the conversations with as we get into, as V-Trans presents some of the detailed designs of the engineering as to whether it's possible during a 10-week closure to somehow maintain that pedestrian flow through.
Yeah.
And it's going to probably be dynamic, so it may be a matter of some part of the time it's in the middle between Merchants Row and Main Street,
Yeah.
and other times it'll be outboard. But I think we found during this effort that we really do have a good team on the project, and so they're willing to look at challenges and how to address them.
And that's a good point. We talked a little bit about that, about at least maintaining even the pedestrian link, and that could be a mobile bridge that get moved as they're doing the project. And they do have that in their radar, because this has just reaffirmed what our thoughts were, is that you need to have that link. People aren't going to walk all the way around. At least you're going to have a significant attrition rate on the number that will, or can.
Can is actually the point that was interesting.
Yep.
Those who will, but just some people just had, then they observed situations of difficulty.
Yep.
And so then suddenly there was this sense of forlornment of how I get through my destination.
Well, I just wanted to say, one of the things I observed this morning were the heavy milk trucks that were coming across, and this came up in our Public Health and Safety Committee, like a concern about the old stone bridge and the weight on the old stone bridge, and if that's something we need to keep an eye on, and whether we might need a truck ordinance. So we're talking about that in the Public Health and Safety Committee, so I just wanted you to be aware of that emerging conversation. And there were a couple of other things that I could report at a later meeting that are coming out of health and safety.
Okay. The only thing I have is I'd like to thank Public Works for working. I think a number of us may have heard from the Middlebury New Filmmaker Festival group on their fear of losing a significant chunk of parking. What is for them a very big weekend as we work on the Mill Street lot, and as they have shown throughout this summer, the Public Works Department were responsive to the needs of the community. The one thought I had is that maybe as we move forward, if we have a master calendar, we can project more and it help figure out where, and help with the planning cycle that maybe we would block off like what we did with the bridge. I thought what Jim put together helped the bridge planning quite a bit. I think it was a substantial improvement over just not having that in your in your planning window when you're working on the planning. Well, geez, this week looks good, but you may have something you don't see.
Right.
And I think that's what happened with this. We just didn't recognize the link to the Middlebury New Filmmakers Festival and parking in Mill Street. So thank you very much to Dan and Bill and the crew to work through that. So with that, if there's nothing else, I would seek a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay.
I opposed, no, just kidding.